The Vision by Guy de Maupassant. Towards the end of a friendly gathering in an old mansion on the Rue de Grenelle, the conversation unexpectedly turned to the subject of property sequestration, prompted by a recent court case. Everyone present had a story to tell, and each one vouched for the absolute truth of their own. The old Marquis de la Tour Samuel, who was 82, rose slowly, walked over to the fireplace, leaned on the marble mantelpiece, and began to speak in a quavering, yet still expressive voice. I, too, know of a strange incident, so strange that it has haunted me all my life. 56 years have passed since then, yet not a month goes by that I don't see it in my dreams. From that day on, a mark was left upon me, an imprint of terror. Do you understand? In just 10 minutes, I experienced such mortal dread that it has remained forever in my soul. Any sudden noise sends a shudder straight to my heart. At twilight, when objects lose their definition, I am seized by a mad desire to flee. And I confess, I am afraid of the night. Oh, I would never have admitted this if I were not so old. Now I am permitted to speak frankly. At 82, one can afford not to be brave in the face of imaginary dangers. I never flinched before a real threat, ladies. This event shook me so profoundly, instilled in me such an extraordinary and mysterious anxiety that I have never spoken of it. I kept it in the most secret recesses of my soul, where one hides agonizing and shameful secrets, weaknesses one dares not confess. I will tell you exactly what happened, without attempting to explain it. An explanation surely exists, unless I went mad for a brief moment. But no, I was not mad, and I will prove it to you. Think what you will. Here are the bare facts. It happened in July 1827. I was stationed with the garrison in Rouen at the time. One day, while strolling along the quay, I noticed a man who seemed familiar, but I couldn't for the life of me remember who he was. Instinctively, I slowed my pace. The stranger, noticing this, looked at me and threw his arms around me. It was a dear friend from my youth, for whom I had great affection. In the 5 years since we had last met, he seemed to have aged half a century. His hair had turned completely white, and he walked with a stoop like an invalid. Seeing my astonishment, he told me his story. A terrible misfortune had broken him. He had fallen madly in love with a young woman and married her in a transport of joy. For a year they lived in a state of almost superhuman bliss. Then she had died suddenly of a heart condition, undoubtedly killed by that very passion. On the day of her burial, he left his chateau and moved to his townhouse in Rouen. There he lived in complete solitude, gripped by despair, consumed by grief, and was so wretched that he seriously contemplated suicide. Since we have met, he said, I must ask a great favor of you. Go to my chateau and fetch some papers from the secretary in the bedroom. Our bedroom, which I urgently need. I cannot entrust this to a servant or a lawyer. I require absolute silence and secrecy. As for me, I could not possibly cross the threshold of that house again. I will give you the key to the room. I locked it myself when I left, and the key to the secretary. I'll give you a note for the gardener. He will let you into the chateau. Come and see me tomorrow morning, and we will arrange everything. I promised to do as he asked. For me, it was a simple excursion. His estate was about 5 leagues from Rouen. On horseback, I could get there in less than an hour. The next day, at 10 o'clock sharp, I was at his house. We breakfasted together, but he spoke scarcely 20 words. He apologized, saying the thought of my visiting that room, where his happiness had perished, filled him with profound emotion. And indeed, he seemed extraordinarily agitated, tense within, as if a painful struggle were taking place in his soul. The conversation at a small gathering in an old mansion on the Rue de Grenelle had turned, as the evening drew to a close, to the subject of sequestrated property in connection with a recent lawsuit. Everyone had a story to tell, each one vouching for its absolute truth. The old Marquis de la Tour Samuel, aged 82, rose slowly, walked over to the mantelpiece, and leaning his elbow upon it, began to speak in a voice that trembled a little, but was still strong. I also know of something so strange that it has been a haunting memory all my life. It happened 56 years ago, and yet there is not a month in which I do not see it again in my dreams. The mark of fear it left upon me has endured. Do you understand what I mean? No? Well, for 10 minutes, I experienced such terrible fear that ever since a constant dread has remained in my soul. Unexpected noises make me shudder to the heart. Objects I cannot clearly distinguish in the twilight compel me to flee. In short, I am afraid of the night. I should never have confessed that before I reached my present age. But at 82 one may speak frankly. I have never shrunk from real danger, mesdames. It is therefore permissible to feel nervous about unreal dangers. This adventure so profoundly moved me, instilled in me such a mysterious and deep-seated terror that I never spoke of it. I have kept it hidden in the depths of my soul, in that inner sanctuary where we conceal our sorrows, our shameful secrets, all the weaknesses we dare not confess. Let me tell you the story exactly as it happened, without any attempt at explanation. There probably is an explanation, unless I was momentarily mad. And even if I were, I could prove it to you. You may think what you please. Here are the facts. It was in 1827, in July. I was stationed at Rouen. One day, as I was walking along the quay, I saw a man whom I thought I recognized, but could not be sure. Instinctively, I slowed my pace. He saw this, looked at me, and fell into my arms. It was a friend of my youth to whom I had been deeply attached. 4 or 5 years I had not seen him, and he seemed to have aged half a century. His hair was quite white, and he stooped as though exhausted. He realized my surprise and told me the story of his life. A terrible misfortune had shattered him. Having fallen madly in love with a girl, he had married her in a transport of delight. After a year of more than human bliss, she died suddenly of heart failure, killed by love itself, no doubt. He had left his chateau on the day of the funeral and had come to live in his townhouse at Rouen. There he lived, alone and despairing, so tortured by grief that he constantly thought of suicide. "Since I have met you," he said, "I will ask you to do me an important service. Go to my house and get some papers I urgently need from a desk in my bedroom. Our bedroom. I cannot send a servant or a lawyer, for absolute secrecy is necessary. I want no one in the world to know about this errand. As for myself, nothing would induce me to re-enter that house. I will give you the key of the room, which I locked myself when I came away, and the key of the desk. Also a note to my gardener, who will let you in. Come and see me tomorrow, and we will have lunch together." I promised to do this simple thing for him. It was, after all, merely a trip of about 5 leagues from Rouen, and his estate would be easy enough to find. At 10 o'clock the next day, I was with him. We breakfasted alone together, but he spoke scarcely 20 words. He begged me to pardon him. The thought of the visit I was about to make to that room, the scene of his dead happiness, overwhelmed him, he said. He did, indeed, seemed strangely agitated, as if wrestling with some mysterious resolution. The chairs in the room were displaced, as if someone had recently moved them about. I noticed that one of the doors, probably leading to a closet, was slightly ajar. My first action was to go to the window, intending to throw it open and let in the light. But the rusty bolts on the shutters were so firmly stuck that they would not yield in the slightest. I even tried to break them with my saber, but to no avail. Annoyed by my futile attempts, and having grown accustomed to the gloom, I gave up on the idea of illuminating the room and moved toward the secretary. I sat down in the armchair, lowered the front panel, and opened the indicated drawer. It was crammed full of papers. I only needed 3 bundles, and knowing what they looked like from the description, I began my search. I was straining my eyes, trying to make out the inscriptions, when I sensed, not so much heard as felt, a faint rustle behind me. At first, I paid it no mind, deciding it was a draft stirring the curtain. But a minute later, another, barely perceptible movement evoked in me a strange, uneasy feeling. A shudder ran over my skin. It was absurdly foolish to be nervous, and I didn't even turn around, ashamed of my own suggestibility. Just then, I found the second bundle, then the third, and suddenly a deep, heavy sigh sounded directly behind me. In terror, I leaped back from the chair, putting a good 2 meters between us, and spun around sharply, my hand gripping the hilt of my saber. And truly, had I not felt it there, I might have turned and fled. There, right by the chair where I had been sitting a moment before, stood a tall woman in white. She was looking straight at me, motionless. I was so shocked, I nearly fell over backward. Oh, no one can comprehend that dull, paralyzing horror without having experienced it. The heart seems to stop, the body turns soft as a sponge, and everything inside one seems to give way. I did not believe in ghosts, and yet I nearly fainted from an agonizing, superstitious fear of the dead. In those few minutes, I experienced more terror than in all the rest of my life. It was an overwhelming dread in the face of something supernatural. Had she not spoken, I might have died there. But she spoke. Her voice was gentle, sorrowful, the kind that makes one tremble. I cannot say I regained my composure. I was stunned, scarcely aware of my actions, but an innate pride, and I suppose a soldier's bearing, compelled me to maintain an outward dignity. I was posturing for myself, and probably for her as well, whoever she was, woman or specter. I understood all this only later. At that moment, I thought of but one thing. I was afraid. She said, "Oh, sir, you could do me a great service." I tried to reply, but could not utter a single word. Only an indistinct sound escaped my throat. She continued, "Will you? You can save me, cure me. I suffer terribly. I suffer all the time. Oh, how I suffer." She slowly sank into my armchair and went on looking at me. "Will you?" I nodded, still unable to speak. My voice would not obey me. Then she held out a tortoiseshell comb to me and whispered, "Comb my hair. Oh, comb it. It will cure me. I must have my hair combed. Look at my head. How I suffer. My hair causes me such pain." Her hair was loose, very long, and it seemed to me black. It hung over the back of the chair and touched the floor. Why did I do it? Why did I, trembling, take the comb and run it through that hair, which felt icy cold to my touch, like handling a snake? I cannot explain it. That sensation lives in my fingers to this day, and I shudder at the mere memory. I combed her hair. I do not know how I managed those cold strands. I twisted them, tied them into a knot, unplated and replated them like a horse's mane. She sighed, bowed her head, seemed soothed. Suddenly she said, "Thank you," snatched the comb from my hands, and disappeared through the very same half-open door I had noticed upon entering. Left alone, I stood for a few seconds in a stupor, as if waking from a nightmare. Finally, I came to my senses, rushed to the window, and shattered the shutter with a furious blow. Light came flooding into the room. I ran to the door through which the woman had vanished, but it was locked and would not yield. A frantic, panicky fear seized me, the kind one feels on the battlefield. I grabbed the 3 bundles of letters from the secretary, dashed through the house, taking the stairs in leaps, and found myself outside, I know not how. My horse was standing 10 paces away. In one bound, I was in the saddle and galloping away. I did not stop until I reached my quarters in Rouen. Throwing the reins to my orderly, I ran inside and locked myself in to collect my thoughts. For a whole hour, I agonized. Had I been the victim of a hallucination? Surely, it was a nervous shock, a temporary disturbance of the mind, the very thing that gives rise to miracles and supernatural visions. I had almost convinced myself it was a trick of the senses. But then, as I went to the window, I happened to glance down at my chest. My entire uniform was covered in long strands of woman's hair caught on the buttons. I picked them off, one by one, and with trembling fingers threw them out the window. I then called my orderly. I was too agitated to go see my friend immediately. I wanted to think it all over before speaking to him. I sent him the letters by messenger, and he returned a receipt with the soldier. He had asked about me. He was told I was unwell, that I had suffered from sunstroke, and something else. He seemed concerned. The next day at dawn, I went to see him, resolved to tell him everything. It turned out he had gone out the previous evening and had not returned. I called again during the day. He was still absent. I waited a week. He did not appear, so I alerted the police. They searched for him everywhere, but found not a single trace. He had not passed through any toll gates, had not been seen anywhere. A meticulous search was conducted of the deserted chateau. Nothing suspicious was discovered. There was no indication of a woman's presence. The investigation led nowhere and was eventually abandoned. And so, for 56 years, I have learned nothing more. Nothing.